Comes from us for Oxford Properties, Lachlan MacQuarrie. How are you?
Great, thank you. How are you?
Terrific. You've been doing a great job, both as our chair and also in your position. What have you seen on the trade show floor? What have you seen here at the show that's got you excited?
I think I've seen a lot more general excitement in identifying solutions. So I think that in the past, what I've seen is a lot of great ideas that were probably very relevant for people, but a lot of people didn't know what to do with them. I think increasingly what I'm seeing is that there's solutions here that people are starting to now understand and connect the dots on. So I think that's a change. I'm sensing a change in any event.
If you had to pick a few major themes emerging from Realcomm 2016 that are pointing us to what's happening in the industry, what would you say the major themes you're observing are?
Well, certainly as I look around, I certainly would say a theme of visualization of information. Definitely a theme of cybersecurity, and I think I would say a theme around utilization of data around fault detection that can solve and make things more efficient. So I would say those three themes jump out at me as opportunities.
When we talk about security in the real estate space and the technology space, what's most at front of mind for you?
Well, first and foremost, we are a company which rents space to people, and so ultimately we have to have a combination of physical security which protects them, but we also have to make sure that that we have systems that if they rely on us, that they don't fail. So when I think about security, that might be security of our infrastructure, which protects and runs the HVAC system, the security access controls, those elements that they depend on but don't think about. So right. I think that's what I think about. And we also own shopping centers, and we have digital media platforms. You know, if we have a cyber breach in a digital mall environment, what is on the screen could be quite impactful. And so that's a reputational risk. So
absolutely. So what steps are you taking to double down on security?
Well, we're certainly spending a lot of time identifying the networks that we run and how those are run and how those are managed. So we're ensuring that vendors don't have backdoor access to our systems. We need to know when they're there, who's there, and what they're doing when they're there. So we're looking at that information. We're also building robust capabilities around understanding the ecology of our buildings and our systems so that we understand when people are pinging us and touching us. So a lot of it today is around building the governance model, identifying the infrastructure to make it work, and then identifying those vendors that are going to help us through that process. So we have a director of security who comes out of a physical security background, but is also trained in the IT space. So he's bringing to the forefront a lot of those opportunities for us, and it couldn't be more timely. So,
what are some of the innovations that you at Oxford are putting forward to make the experience of the people who work with you more pleasant? What are you employing?
Well, I think the first thing I would suggest is, which is not a sexy innovation, but we're going down the road of a fault detection and visualization. So that's a platform which ultimately impacts the cost on which we run our buildings. So not sexy, but we lower the cost to our tenants.
Right.
So that's important for us.
That's sexy. Money is sexy.
That money's sexy. I would say the next thing, it depends on the asset class we're looking at. So we're looking at all of our assets today in terms of our retail and our office in particular are driving down, putting integrated backbones into their buildings. And that's an innovation which ultimately allows us to integrate systems. So that's the enabling factor, I would say. When you get into the shopping center world, we're doing things around location-based analytics. We're looking at and identifying and tracking users, so we follow pathways in which they go, where they shop, how much time they spend somewhere. Ultimately, that data is going to be used to identify and drive value to our vendors, or our tenants, our customers, so that we can put the right mix in our shopping centers. And then we can also change the experience of the shopper. So we're looking at things like social Wi-Fi, the ability to connect and make that seamless omni-channel experience a little bit more advanced, so that ultimately they do buy that dress, shoes, makeup in our shopping center. If they buy it online, it doesn't help our sales at the end of the day. And what sales do is they link back to the bottom line to our ability to collect rent. So,
if I was talking to you 5 years ago, so it's the same conversation, 2011, which of the technologies that you're using today would you be most surprised by?
I think we're looking at technology today that is about, so I'll take visualization, for instance,
Right.
and fault detection. I would have expected 5 years ago that we had great systems. And we do have great systems. We've had building automation systems in our properties. We've had smart operators running our buildings. But the reality is the sheer volume of other things that have come to the real estate forefront, such as sustainability, LEED certification, the role of customer service. Those other platforms have evolved so much, so in around the realm of productivity, so much that our operators and our teams are having to spend an inordinate amount of time just understanding what's new in our industry. So what I'm surprised with is that the systems we're doing today are really trying to make those non-traditional things, thinking about the automation, the backgrounds, the building automation systems, make those work.
Right.
And so that we're trying to free up time for a traditional back of the house operator so they can do things that add more value to our customer in the first place. So it's a little surprising that the old systems of the past, which we still have in our buildings operating the building automation systems, that they haven't evolved as quickly. You're seeing technology today around visualization and fault detection that's coming out of teams of people that are in their early 20s. And now there's obviously some very sophisticated companies that have evolved legitimately through an incremental approach. But there are people here on the showroom floor that look like they're certainly younger than you'd expect.
Right. We're hearing a lot about that, and in fact, a lot of people are talking about how the influx of millennials into the workforce has been an interesting challenge for them, because it feels as though they feel that there's really a gulf in the culture, that there's really a whole new culture there. Do you find that at Oxford?
We certainly are aware of it. I don't know that we see necessarily the impact yet, but when we think about productivity and you think about young people coming to our organizations, they've grown up with iPhones. And they've grown, and they're growing up today with Nest access controls for their parents' home or their own home. And so you think about that, and now they walk into our building and they have to tap a card on a security reader to get through the elevator access control. That doesn't feel normal to them.
Right.
They're used to having it happen virtually.
Sure.
And so I think that as we think about that grouping of the demographic as that shifts through our workforce of our customers and our tenants, we're expecting in 10 years that probably 75% of the people that work in our buildings are in that grouping of people. They're probably today 27 years old, and they're going to expect to have different technologies tomorrow.
Right.
So we've got to start thinking more and more about that. And there's certainly more of a focus on productivity, more of a perspective on wellness, more of a perspective on quality when they're in an office space. So I think that technology has the ability to bridge that gap ultimately.
You were deeply involved with the conference this year.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. To someone who's thinking about doing the same thing, taking on that responsibility, what have been some of the gifts, benefits, advantages to taking on that leadership role for us here at Realcomm?
Well, I'll speak personally. It's a great opportunity to challenge yourself in any event. Anytime you have to step up and do something that is not your norm per se, it gives you a new skill or new capability. So that's a great side benefit, I would suggest. The other benefits, which are a bit more obvious, are working with the Realcomm team, people like Howard and Jim and Lisa and Sherry. They make it easy for you. So that's that's brilliant. And then they're connectors. I'll be in the floor today at the Smart Building Showcase, and Howard will say, "There's someone you have to meet."
Right.
And Howard will walk me over, and I'll meet that person. And that's a great conversation. If I look back on how we started our Smart journey, I suspect it was at the boot camp with someone like Howard saying, "You should meet the folks from this firm." So I think there's some real opportunities for us to get some valuable relationships started, which probably will evolve over time.
Terrific. As you look forward to the future of Oxford, what do you see?
Well, we're a company that continues to grow. And we have, when I joined Oxford about 6 years ago, we had about $16 billion of assets under management. Today, we have just over $42 billion of assets under management. We are growing, and in the next 3 to 5 years, we expect to be a $60 billion company. So we are in a growth mode. And as I look at and think about how technology is evolving, technology and the Internet of Things is going to form part of that. Yeah. We are a developer as much as we are an owner-manager. So we are building, I think, part of the future buildings that are going to have to be meeting the needs of smart and connected.
Terrific. Lachlan, thank you so much for your contribution to Realcomm, the show this year, all years, and to the industry as a whole.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.